You guys chose not to use your timeouts on New Mexico's final drive. What was the thinking there?
Same type of thought. Obviously the book says inside of, the 10-yard line, you got to save your time. Probably on the third and short, if I go back and do it again, I'd probably rip a timeout right there because they're going to get all their plays in and we need to save time, for ourselves on the back end. So that was probably the one thing I'd probably do again.
Because the Cougs didn't call any of those 3 timeouts on New Mexico's final drive of the game, the Lobos were able to milk the clock down to 21 seconds as they took the lead 38-35 in the final moments of the fourth quarter. Saturday night in New Mexico, the Washington State Cougars fall to the Lobos 38-35 in really a tale of two halves. The Cougars enter halftime with a 28-14 lead. Receiver Kyle Williams enters halftime with 6 receptions, 127 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Mateer started the game going 11 for 11, 221 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Also scoring a rushing touchdown in the first half, setting the WSU school record for a quarterback with rushing touchdowns on the year. He now has 11. The Cougar defense the first half did a solid job of containing New Mexico's quarterback Devin Dampier, but as I mentioned, the second half was a different story. Dampier ended the night with 192 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns on 27 carries, while completing just 11 of 25 passes for 174 yards and another touchdown. New Mexico running back Eli Sanders accounted for 108 rushing yards and a touchdown on 13 carries, while the Cougars offense in the second half continued their third quarter woes as Mateer was just 3 of 9 for 16 yards in the third quarter. In the first half, the Cougar offense racked up 4 touchdowns on 357 total yards, punting the ball just 1 time, while New Mexico forced the Cougs to punt the ball the first 3 possessions in the second half. New Mexico's offense was able to gain a total of 534 yards this game. Washington State's offense had 547 yards this game. Neither team had a turnover. Mateer finished the day in the air going 25 of 36 with 375 yards and 4 touchdowns. Kyle Williams had 9 receptions, 181 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And this was Kyle's second straight hat trick, 3 touchdowns in each game. Mateer on the ground finished with 9 rushes for 65 yards. Leo Pulilasi finished with 10 carries for 58 yards. Wayshawn Parker 11 for 47. And New Mexico's rushing attack finished with 360 rushing yards. Devin Dampier accounted for 28 carries, 193 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Eli Sanders had 13 carries for 108 yards. And Naquari Rogers finished with 6 carries for 48 yards. And the game management at the end of this game was questionable at best. We entered the fourth quarter tied 28-28. WSU is driving. They are forced to punt in New Mexico's territory. New Mexico's next drive then starts with 12:05 on the clock. WSU forces them to kick a field goal from 19 yards out. They move up 31-28 with 4:40 left in the game. WSU's next drive starts with 4:37 on the clock and takes just 4 plays for them to score on a 37-yard touchdown pass to Kyle Williams. This drive takes just over a minute and 20 seconds off the clock. New Mexico is given the ball with 3:12 on the clock. And this entire drive is just a rushing attack. Devin Dampier rushes 8 times, 2 other running backs rush twice. They only attempt 1 pass, which was an incompletion. They're able to take the clock from 3:12 down to just 21 seconds as Devin Dampier rushes into the end zone. As New Mexico is driving, there are no timeouts used by Washington State. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below on this game, but let's get into this episode with Dylan Howe. Man, what in the world was that second half? They go up 28-14 heading into halftime. John Mateer is 15 for 17, 267 yards with 3 touchdowns in the air, 7 carries for 36 yards and a touchdown, setting a WSU single season school record for a quarterback with 11 rushing touchdowns on the year. Kyle Williams having a big first half, and then the second half, that third quarter, John Mateer finished that third quarter 3 for 9, 16 yards. They had to punt the ball the first 3 drives of the second half. What happened?
I'll tell you what happened. It was a combination of things, but our coaching staff, defensively, offensively, and from a head coaching standpoint, got outworked, outclassed, outmanned, out everything. It was horrible. Jeff Schmedding had constantly had 4 to 6 guys in the box when they ran the ball 19 of the last 20 plays of the game for New Mexico. At some point, you need to load the box up with 8 players, 7 to 8 guys, because it was the same play and the same type of formation, the jet sweep, RPO, whatever you want to call it. Sanders, Dampier, they were killing us. I didn't see the defense having a stop in them in that second half. So on the final drive, the Cougs, I think, took under a minute and a half to score. They left 3 minutes and change on the clock. I immediately tweeted out, way too much time. And sure enough, New Mexico ran the ball down their throat on the final drive. I mean, Bronco Mendenhall had to be laughing at what he was seeing from the Cougs from a defensive standpoint. Then obviously Dampier, he throws for 174 yards, but he was 11 for 25. So he's averaging 15.8 yards per pass. He had 28 carries for 193 yards. Eli Sanders chipped in 13 for 108 yards. I mean, they just bowled him over. And it's just super unfortunate to see. In my opinion, Jeff Schmedding, he should have been left on the tarmac. He shouldn't have been allowed to fly home to Pullman. And I hope those 3 timeouts, all 3 of them had their own seat on that plane ride home, because that was despicable. And to say that your excuse at the end of the game is analytics, I too want less time for my offense on a final drive to end the game as well. There should have been a timeout called either after the first down was made going into the 10-yard line or after the second down. There should have been at least 25 to 35 seconds remaining on that clock for the Cougs going into that final drive. You know what? The magic happened against San Jose State. You know why? Because they had 37 to 40 seconds left in the game to go down and give Dean a shot. And you know what? Who's to say Dean even makes the field goal at the rate this game was going? They finally were snake bitten. This road record and these road quandaries finally came back and bit them in the butt. And like we said, the first drive of the second half, it's 28 to 14 Cougs. Hand the ball off to Wayshawn Parker, 12-yard carry. Connor, what were the stats for rushing yards in the second half?
The second half, they had 10 total carries for 72 yards. They were averaging 7.2 per carry in the second half, but they only rushed the ball 10 times.
How many yards does it take to get a first down in football, Connor?
I want to say it's still 10. I could be wrong.
10 yards. You're averaging 7.2 per carry. This is where our 28-year-old offensive coordinator comes out sometimes, where you remember, oh, wow, I'm 3 years older than our offensive coordinator.
You and I put up numbers. We play some solid defense in the NCAA 25. Who's to say that we can't do better?
I see better clock management from us on our weekly CFP 25
we're literally
showdown.
like every week we're like, you're not getting the ball again this half or this game, and we run out the clock like you should. Yeah, you mentioned how the Cougs weren't stacking the box. The Cougs allowed 360 rushing yards against the Lobos. Devin Dampier, 28 carries, 193 yards. He was averaging right at 7 per carry, 3 touchdowns. He had a long of 33. He ran the ball 142 yards, and both touchdowns that came in the second half. He alone accounted for 75 yards on that game-winning drive, driving down the field. And we knew coming into this game that Devin wasn't the best passer. Again, as you mentioned, 11 completions, 25 attempts, 174 total yards, and a touchdown. Make him pass the ball. He's going to miss his targets. He missed wide open guys at times tonight. He didn't have the deep ball. Like Mateer is also known to not have the deep ball. Mateer had some great deep balls tonight. They scored a little too quick, and you can't discount, or you can't really put the blame on Mateer and Kyle Williams for scoring too quickly and too well. It's on the play calling. Run the ball.
Mateer post-game even said it himself. He said, the stats will be good, but my situational eyes and feet, they weren't good. They weren't as good as they needed to be, and that's why we're here. And you're exactly right. He missed 3 open receivers after that Wayshawn Parker rush to start the second half. And Carlos Hernandez, he missed him wide open at the 30-yard line of New Mexico. And it was clear he was busting that for a touchdown. It goes to a 35-14 game. Your whole offensive game plan changes. You're milking the clock. You're running the ball more. And then, New Mexico, they score quick. It's 28-21. And all of a sudden, now you have a ball game. Now you have the sparse New Mexico crowd into it. And then it gets to a point where there's pressure on the coaching staff, the players, the play calling, and they folded. They simply folded.
And Dylan, you told me a couple of stats. This is the first Lobos victory over a ranked team since 2003. And this is the first time that it was against a non-conference top 20 ranked team in 84 years.
Yeah, 84 years for a non-conference top 20 victory. 20 years for a top 25 victory. New Mexico got off to a Mike Leach Cougar start. They lost to Montana State to open up the season. They started the year 0-4. They're now 5-6. They've got a dynamic offense. You know what? You got to credit New Mexico and Bronco Mendenhall and their entire coaching staff for getting the dub. And you know what? I'll be rooting for them against Hawaii in the final game of the season. just to hope that they're going to be bowl eligible and hopefully end the season 7-6, make the loss look a little better. But it was a catastrophe. That's the word of the day: catastrophe. I mean, it was just horrible. And it just, it gives you a really sour taste in your mouth going into the end of the season. But hey, you know what? At the end of the day, we have still got to support the Cougs. You still need to support the Cougar Collective. You look at Oregon State and what their transformation has been from last year to this year. You don't want that to happen to WSU. So the Cougar Collective, NIL, it needs to be backed. It still needs to continue. You have an opportunity to still finish this season at 10-2 and possibly look at a Holiday Bowl. Maybe a possibility of the Alamo Bowl, but that looks like it's probably going to go to Arizona State if they don't get the automatic bid out of the Big 12, because like we said, there's a draft for these bowl games for the old Pac-12 schools. So, hopefully you can still end the season in San Diego with a Holiday Bowl opponent. That would be a Big 10 opponent. It could be an old Pac-12 foe too, so you never know.
And after this loss, WSU has actually moved down to 25 in the AP poll. We'll see where they're at in the college football playoff poll, but this kills their chances at the college football playoffs. They are heading to Corvallis next week to take on the Oregon State Beavers. This is their final road game of the season. Looking to finish the season strong, and we'll see if they can pull out another victory and where they'll end up in the bowl game. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Couch GM. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this game, the WSU season so far, what needs to happen moving forward, and we'll see you on the next one.